If you're a new or old entrepreneur who's new to digital advertising and you realize that is a very integral part of your business, in order for you to remain profitable at scale, but you've been frustrated because you have not yet hit the milestone in your business where you've created a control. That means a proven framework within your advertising that has been proven to win that you can then create new tests against, right? And it's frustrating because while your service and your product is proven and you have received a great deal of word of mouth references and it's you've actually gotten a significant amount of sales organically. When it comes to the digital advertising of your service or your product, you're hitting a brick wall and you're beginning to become discouraged. If you've been looking all over and you've been finding a bunch of confusing information that leaves you stuck, you've come to the right video. I'm just going to have a straightforward conversation with you, and I want you to listen to this video as many times as you need to. I'm not going to get overly technical. I'm just going to be straightforward because you have already won half the battle. If you have a proven product or a proven service and a proven scalable business model. So let's start there. If your business makes economic sense, meaning you can scale it. In other words, if you have a service-based business, you can duplicate yourself or you have duplicated yourself. So you're not the sole person that is fulfilling it, right? Because then you become the chief cooker and bottleneck of that business, right? That's not really scalable, right? Like if you're running a service-based business where you physically have to fulfill it yourself, that's not scalable, right? And economically, it may or may not make sense. Reason being is even if it's profitable and you make a lot, and let's just say it takes you no more than 4 hours to fulfill it, you still have a limitation on how you can scale that unless you duplicate yourself. So we always want to start from a standpoint of, does our business make economic sense? Is it scalable? If it is scalable, then you're in a very, very good position. Because even if you're new to advertising and you don't understand the nuances of it or its technological challenges, you still have a great, great, great starting point where you're at, right? So let's start there. Making sure that your business, the service that you provide, the product itself, and the sales from that product can cover your operation expenses, and can cover your marketing expenses, right? That's what you want to be able to do. You want to be able to cover all of the expenses that you need in order for your business to be able to be scalable and profitable moving forward. So I want to talk about advertising. If you are confused, I'm going to refer you to a book by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. It's called Who Not How. I want you to read that book from cover to cover and read it as many times as you need. Sometimes it's not an operation problem alone. It's usually a collaboration problem or lack thereof. You simply need to collaborate with someone who is better suited to do the task that you need to get done in order to make your business more sustainable and scalable. If you don't have a good understanding about advertising, you simply need to partner with someone who does. Or if you're interested in it and you want to learn it and you want to begin testing, that's the one thing you need to keep in mind. Testing. It is always going to require testing. You're going to have to understand the best practices concerning the structures that you need to use regarding whatever advertising platform that you will be using. right? So Facebook, for instance, has its own best practices. And of course, they're constantly updating. So does Google, so does TikTok, Twitter, Amazon, Taboola, Pinterest, and so on and so forth, right? Each of these platforms have their own best practices. Most of them are using a direct response based framework or model, right, in terms of how they operate. So if you're really not familiar with direct response, I suggest you really do your homework and do a lot of research and learn as much as you can about direct response advertising. The reason why direct response advertising is much better for your business versus traditional advertising is because it is more cost effective because it allows you to measure what is working and what isn't working. In terms of traditional advertising, that is really used for companies that are well established, well known, and have huge financial volume coming in terms of acquiring new customers and the retention of customers and the lifetime value of their customers, such as let's say uh, Procter and Gamble and their many subsidiaries. I believe I'm not sure. No, I don't even want to mention that because I don't want to misrepresent them. But let's just say McDonald's, right, as a brand, right? They've been around a long time. Now, they traditionally use the traditional sense of advertising where it's more broad based, right? And it's not laser targeted or they don't do a lot of measuring. But it works because they're a household name and they actually are a worldwide known brand. All companies don't have that luxury. So direct response is more cost effective for smaller businesses and larger businesses because you can measure your performance concerning your advertising and your marketing, concerning what's working and what isn't. Now, when it comes to running campaigns and things like that, testing is always required at every level, right? Before you can get to the level of scaling, you need to know what's working and what doesn't work. You need to know what you did so you can know what to do. So everything has to be measurable. You have to understand how to read the metrics of that business, right? How to analyze that data and make data-based decisions. You have to be very objective in your thinking and not emotional because a lot of times we could run a campaign and like I said, the service is perfect, the product is perfect, and we already have a lot of proven organic results from that business. But from the digital standpoint, it's hitting a brick wall. So that means there's just simply something that needs to be fixed within your campaign structure, or your marketing approach as a whole. There are a bunch of foundational principles, but I will say this: understanding your customer and what matters to them, and making sure, like I said, you've already checked off the box that your company has a brilliant economic structure. So your service or your product actually is profitable. In other words, after your cost of doing goods, after your operation expenses and all of those things, you have a good deal of margin left over to work with, right? And I'm talking net, not even covering your advertising expenses, right? And that is what we would refer to as the MER, right, of your business, the marketing efficiency ratio of your business, right? And then, of course, you have to factor in also the AMER, the acquisition marketing efficiency ratio of your business, right? When it comes to acquiring new leads, new customers into your business, because at scale, you're going to need to be bringing in new people, right? And of course, you always want to have great systems of loving on your customers and clients so you can retain them long term, right? And that deals with the customer retention. If you have all of that, all of those things down organically, I'm telling you, the only thing you need to do is learn direct response advertising, learn the individual platforms and their best practices, learn copywriting, right? Or even work with someone who really understands it well. even if you don't plan to do these things yourself, take the time to learn this stuff and how it works. The best thing you can do as the leader of your brand, right? Even if you're going to be delegating most of these things, right? And putting it to an automation system, you at least want to understand what these things are and how they work and why it's important for your business. So copywriting is pretty much sales and print. It's the language that we use in order to communicate the value of our products and services, whether that is through the ads, whether that is in image ads, the text that you see, anything that deals with the scripts that are used in ads, with which the people, the presenters are speaking, or the text that they read, that is called the copy, right? So copywriting is the heart and soul of your business, because it's how you communicate the value to the customer. It's how you call out that customer, right? In your targeting, is actually what stops them, right? Headlines and some headlines have been big since the days of newspapers, right? So we know that to be true. Even when we're watching television commercials, it usually comes out with a headline, whether we see it visually or they're speaking it, right? It's that first line that hits us and stops us in our tracks and gets our attention, right? The call out, right? The hook, right? So you want to really understand copywriting and how that works. You really want to understand direct response advertising and how that works, and the measuring ability that you have using it. And that's why I love Google, Facebook, and pretty much all of the modern digital advertising platforms, is because they pretty much use the framework of direct response, because they allow you to measure the performance of your ads and things. And look at it like this: you're testing. You can figure out best practices on this channel. I will be sharing some of those, but I just kind of wanted to have the conversation to let you know, to encourage you that you're on the right track, right? Don't get discouraged. Even the most seasoned veteran of advertisers always know the importance of testing. If you don't believe me, look up any old videos of David Ogilvy speaking, or Gary Halbert, or Dan Kennedy, right? Or Eugene Schwartz, right? Look up the greats, right? These are some of the greatest minds in digital advertising. And I know a lot of them were before digital advertising, but digital advertising is based on the direct response framework, right? Because it uses that same system of measuring, and it incorporates copywriting and all of these things, right? Because even though we're using digital platforms, human beings are still analog, right? So human psychology doesn't change; it's immutable. It's just that what changes is the way we interact with different platforms and their features and technologies. So of course you want to adapt to all of the best practices. And like I said, you yourself don't have to do that. You can hire someone that does, but you need to understand these principles. And the reason why I say, some people might say, Dan Kennedy, Gary Halbert, these guys were before digital advertising. Well, here's the thing. Most of what us digital advertisers and media buyers, the principles and the frameworks that we use concerning the way we create our campaigns and the copywriting and everything, those systems, basically comes from those guys. Like Dan Kennedy, most of what he teaches is still being applied today. David Ogilvy, most of what he teaches is still being applied today. Eugene Schwartz, even Joe Sugarman, right? These guys were ahead of their time. What it shows us is that fundamentally the principles in direct response advertising and marketing do not change just because the platforms and the media and those in the way that we distribute it changes. The principles don't, right? They're evergreen. So you want to have the two. You want to have a good, firm understanding of the evergreen principles, and you want to have a good understanding of the technological, mutable principles and best practices in terms of the media that you're buying and the new placements and things of that nature. But regardless of having a good understanding of all of those things at any point in time, you will need to test. And that's pretty much the point of this. I just want to give you an encouragement on testing. As long as you're testing based on proven principles and things that work, and you're sticking close to that, and you're not trying to reinvent the wheel, you're fine. Don't get discouraged because something may not be working. You may have to tweak something like a headline or something, or change the thumbnail of an ad or a sub headline, or just simply improve the offer, right? And as long as you're remembering, because I always speak to this truth in these videos in terms of you always want to start from where the market is. You never want to start from where you are, but where the market is. Meet the market where they are and only focus on what benefits them, what they get out of it, and the transformation that they're seeking to get. That's all you want to focus on. You don't want to focus on the features of your product. You don't want to focus on the features of your service. And if you do speak on those features, it has to be tied into the transformation. You have to use the language of features and connect it with the language of the transformation and the outcome that they desire to have. And you always want to start from a perspective of the pain that they're experiencing around that problem that they're looking to solve, and how your product moves them away to that, from that pain and into the desired position. And that's why I say things have to be measurable, right? Clearly measurable. They have to clearly be able to see themselves in a before point of view, in the pain that they're currently in, that they're looking to resolve, and then how your product or service will help them get to the outcome, the after, right? That result. So just take in to heart that you're on a good path. Things are not as crazy as they might seem. You just simply need to ask better questions. Instead of asking, how can I do this? How can I figure this out? Ask the question, who can help me figure this out? And I'm telling you, you'll have a great deal of success moving forward. But you always have to stay in testing mode. So you always want to make sure that you're managing your finances very well, because you had to allocate a budget for testing new creatives at all times. I hope this video was helpful to you, and I will see you on the next one.